Hi everyone. So it's been a couple of weeks, I think, since we hit the milestone of 10,000 subscribers. And as promised, this is the video where I'll be answering your questions. Thanks to everyone who sent them in. I read all the comments on all the Google Form submissions. We got over 100 questions, which is amazing. So thank you for that. And also thank you for making my life quite difficult because I obviously can't answer 100 questions in this one video. And yeah, trying to narrow it down was hard. So here I'll be answering some of your questions that you sent through. As I said, there are over 100 of them, so I've had to kind of combine them together into themes to try and get through as many as I can, and I will get through most of them. For those that I don't get to, I'm really sorry, but I didn't want to make this video too long. I will get back to you in some way. If you've posted a comment, then I guess I'll respond to that. Otherwise, feel free to send me a message. I guess that's probably the best way to get in touch with me. So yeah, let's get stuck into it. I've got my laptop here, which you can't see because it's out of shot, but I've got all the questions written down here, and yeah, we'll just get straight into it. So the first one, I got a couple of questions about asking about my favorite things on a couple of different topics, so I thought I'd put them all into one question. I got questions about what my favorite suburb is, my favorite railway line, favorite bus route, and favorite tram. So to start off with the favourite suburb, this was actually a really hard question because there are so many to choose from. If I really had to pick one, I'd actually say North Melbourne would be my favourite suburb. I think it's a really underrated suburb. It's obviously just north of the city, but it covers some really, really nice areas, and I always find it really nice and peaceful. It's a really great place to walk around. Lots of really interesting buildings and historic sites, as well as, you know, lots of nice parks and all that sort of thing. So North Melbourne would definitely be up there. The answer would probably change depending, if you asked me in 6 months, I'd probably give you a different answer. But for the moment, I'd pick North Melbourne. But there are many others that I really love in Melbourne, which might be the topic of a future video, who knows. Favourite railway line, this was also really hard. In terms of Melbourne, this is about railway line in Melbourne, I should probably say, and that was the favourite suburb in Melbourne. So favourite railway line in Melbourne, I'd have to say the Alamein line, not just because it's really scenic, you get some really different and nice views. The bit around Riversdale and Willaston makes you feel like you're much further out from the city than you actually are, like Hayington. But you've got lots of vegetation and greenery, lots of nice houses to look at on your way past as well. It's not too long, which is nice. And for a Gunzel like me, having 3 carriage trains is also very exciting. I don't know what it is about 3 carriage trains, but seeing them and being on one is pretty cool. And the Alamein line has those outside of peak hour. So yeah, Alamein line would probably be my favourite railway line in Melbourne. And again, maybe a future video in terms of, what your favourite railway line is. And what's your favourite railway line? Let me know in the comments below too. In terms of favourite bus routes in Melbourne, I've kind of had to pick 2. One current and one past. Current one would be the 232, which goes to Altona North Park and Ride. Not because of its destination. Altona North Park and Ride is a pretty desolate place if you've ever been there, and yeah, you should check it out if you haven't been there. But the main reason is because it's the only public bus route that goes across the Westgate Bridge, and you get some amazing views going across there and back, and the variety of scenery that you get along the way is quite unique, I think. So yeah, 232 would be a favourite bus route, although there are, of course, others as well. I mean, the 903 is pretty cool, given how long it goes and the different suburbs it goes through as well. But if I had to pick one, 232, Altona North Park and Ride. And I did want to mention the 205, which doesn't exist anymore, but I used to take that quite a bit to and from uni. It was went from Melbourne Uni to Bulleen, and it was one of the several bus routes that used to go down Johnson Street. But the beauty of it was that no one really knew about it. It was a peak-only route. I think it came 4 times in the morning and 4 times in the evening, every half an hour. But no one really knew where it went, so people didn't get on board. So you could have like a half-empty bus in peak hour with you guaranteed a seat all to yourself. People didn't really get on and off, so it went pretty quickly as well. And it was just a really nice experience to be on there. And there were kind of regular passengers too. Like you'd see the same kind of people using it. And I understand why they got rid of it, but it was a nice, felt like your own private bus route in a way, because you'd usually be the only person on the bus down the other end as well. So that was pretty cool. And favourite tram in Melbourne, I have to say the A-Class tram is my favourite tram, only because I've got memories from my childhood from catching that tram. Catching it through the eastern suburbs, it's kind of been the tram that I've caught the most by a long way. And I also think it has the comfiest seats along with the B-Class and Z-Class trams, but there's something about it. And I understand why they're being phased out, because they're not accessible anymore, they're getting old, they're hard to maintain, they're not a modern vehicle, but they're always special to me, and they're probably my favourite tram in Melbourne if I had to pick one. So they're my favourite things on a couple of those. And again, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that, or what your favourite ones of each of those are as well. So the next question, again, combining a couple of different ones. What's your job/career? What's it all about? How did you get there? And what did you study? And would you recommend someone to pursue it? So some of you may know I'm a transport planner. I've worked for a few local governments in Melbourne, but basically, I work as a transport planner. It's an interesting career because it's quite niche. There aren't too many transport planners around, and a transport planner is different to a transport engineer. As an example, people often get them mixed up. Engineers tend to be more on the technical side, so building things, knowing the dimensions or width of something, how to actually construct it. Transport planning is more on the strategic side, so writing policies and strategies, coming up with networks, that sort of thing. So that's kind of the distinction. There is a lot of overlap as well between them, and there's also overlap between transport engineering and transport planning and many other disciplines too. But that's kind of the main difference between them. So that's basically what I do. I write policy, strategy, deal with design from a higher level. What is an appropriate design, rather than going, this has to be 10 centimetres or 15 centimetres, or we have to use this particular material, which is more on the engineering side. Looking at it from a strategic perspective. And transport planning is kind of a branch of urban planning, which, to answer the other part of the question, is what I studied. I did a Master of Urban Planning at Melbourne Uni, and you can kind of specialise from that, if that makes sense. So, when you do urban planning, you can become a statutory planner and deal with individual applications. You can become a strategic planner and deal with the planning scheme. You can become a social planner, many other types of planners, and one of those is a transport planner, where you deal with transport issues, obviously. So that's kind of what I studied. Before that, I actually studied public policy, and before that, international relations. So I kind of moved from one discipline into another, and I might make a video about that, being inspired by Building Beautifully's recent video about how he moved from medicine to engineering, which I thought was a great video. So maybe I'll do a similar one about going into transport planning from a different discipline. And would I recommend someone to do it? Yes, absolutely, go for it. It's fantastic. I would highly recommend it for anyone who's interested, even remotely, in transport. As I said, transport planning's kind of different to transport engineering and some other disciplines that relate to transport, but there is some overlap. But I think transport planning was best for me, and that's why I picked it, because it deals with those higher level strategic issues, which is kind of what I've been studying and learning about. So you get to do so many different things that you're never going to get bored. There's always going to be work for you, and there's always going to be something that interests you. Dealing with everything from changing technology, electric bikes, electric cars, all the way through to multi-billion-dollar rail projects like Melbourne Metro or whatever. There's so much diversity and such a range of different things that you can do that it's suitable for many people. And I mean, I'd really recommend, even if you're remotely interested, having at least a look at what transport planning is and what it does, so you get a better idea of what it's like. And if then it's for you, fantastic. We always need more transport planners, so if you're interested, study up and feel free to head into the profession. And finally, I'd also say that you don't have to have an urban planning or transport planning degree. There isn't really a transport planning degree in Australia that I'm aware of specifically to be a transport planner. There are many transport planners who've come from lots of different disciplines and different backgrounds. So, everything from engineering, urban planning, community development, sustainability, behaviour change. There's lots of different ways you can approach transport planning. So there isn't, as I said, there isn't like a specific, Masters of Transport Planning in Australia, at least, that, you must have in order to become a transport planner. There are lots of different ways that you can qualify or become a transport planner. So the next question says, the next one is about, no, that was my notes. Sorry, I shouldn't read out my notes. So this one is asking how I first became interested in history, and especially the history of Melbourne. Is a good question, and one I had to kind of think about because I can't nail it down to any specific point, because I think I've always been interested in history ever since I was very young. Different types of history. I'm also quite interested in military history, particularly the Second World War, and the politics around it as well. But that's kind of my first memory of being interested in some kind of historical event or fact. Was learning about the Second World War and how it came about, and all the things that happened with that. And then at some point, maybe towards the end of high school, I think, I kind of started to become a bit interested in Melbourne's history and local history. The way that Australian history is taught at school, as many of you will know, is not very good in my opinion. Well, the Australian history that I got taught anyway, because it's quite, I don't know, it's quite boring the way that it's taught. So a lot of people think Australian history is boring because of the way it's taught at schools. Whereas in fact, when you start to dive into it a little bit more, it's actually quite interesting, and there's so much to cover. Everything from the thousands of years of Indigenous history all the way through to, European settlement, how different cities developed, all the ideas that were happening at the time. Something that I do want to do a future video on potentially is just the optimism and idealism that was around, pre-Federation and even after Federation a little bit, of how Australia would become, this kind of English countryside almost. This vision that a lot of people had that, Victoria would be this lush green meadows with hedgerows and little villages scattered everywhere and everything, which is part of the reason why they built so many railway lines in the 1870s and 80s and 90s. But they did genuinely believe that they would become viable, because all these towns and villages and farms would get built there over time, because all this development would happen. And of course, as we know, that didn't eventuate. But that kind of stuff is really interesting to me, and a lot of the topics that I've covered in my videos, I think, is trying to bring out some of that history that's not quite forgotten but glossed over, or just kind of not talked about as much as I think it could be. And trying to get people interested in that kind of history, I think, is really important. So, like I said, I can't remember exactly when I started to become interested in local history or the history of Melbourne, but it was when I discovered some stories like that. And I can't remember if it was reading library books or, someone told me or something. It sent me off on a wild goose chase, because I am prone to do that. I'll find something and then, like a Wikipedia rabbit hole, I have to find the end point of it. But it was probably something like that, because that's what got me interested. It wasn't, learning about Ned Kelly or the First Fleet or whatever at primary school or high school. I was just as bored as everyone else. But yeah, I feel like it was something like that, and it's something that was less talked about that kind of got me thinking, oh, actually there is some interesting stuff in Australian history, maybe I should go look at it. And then obviously narrowed it down to Melbourne and Victoria. So yeah, that's kind of the best answer I can give to that, unfortunately, because like I said, I can't pinpoint the exact moment, but that's kind of the thought process behind how I became interested in it and why, I guess. The next one kind of takes us back to transport, which is, which city or place were you most impressed by in terms of its transport planning? So I went to Europe earlier this year, and well, bit obviously parts of Europe. And I've got to say, even though I'd been there before, the places that I went to this time I was probably most impressed by in terms of its transport and transport planning. So I can't pinpoint an exact place, but I'll go through a couple of examples and maybe talk a little bit about them. So Athens was amazing in terms of getting around. They've got many different types of, I think they've got pretty much every possible mode of urban transport that you can have, except, oh no, you've got that too. They've got diesel buses, trolley buses, metro, suburban trains, intercity trains, trams, ferries, and gondola cable car as well. Oh, the only thing they don't have is a funicular railway, I guess. And there's probably others too that I've forgotten, but it's a pretty good range of modes of transport. That's what, seven or eight different modes of transport in a reasonably smallish city. It's, not that small, but it could be small by comparing it to others. But it was really, really cheap and really easy to get around as well. And it's also quite a compact city as well for the number of people it has. So I was very, very impressed with Athens' transport network. Some of it's a bit old and run down, but it doesn't seem to matter. Lots of people still use it because the service is frequent and it gets people where they need to go quickly. So, and also driving in Athens is just don't even ever try that. Like, you will not survive as a tourist or a non-Greek. Even if you are, a Greek, it's not the best place to drive. So can't recommend that. Paris as well was amazing for similar reasons. The number of metro lines that they have, I think they've got up to 16 or 17 metro lines now, is amazing, and they're all quite long. And they also cross over and overlap a lot, so there's so many different interchange opportunities that you'll probably need to catch at least 2 metro lines to get where you need to go, but it's much easier to tailor the journey for where you need, because you can just get on and off very easily. And I guess a bit closer to home as well, I really like the O-Bahn in Adelaide. Maybe that's just a Gunzel thing, but the O-Bahn's fantastic. For those of you who don't know, it's basically a guided busway. So it's a completely segregated off-road concrete guideway that's specifically for buses. And the buses have little wheels on the side, so the driver doesn't need to touch the wheel, and they just go 90, I think the speed limit was reduced to 90 k's an hour, but it used to be 100 between kind of a couple of major bus interchanges, which take them out into the suburbs very quickly. And that's a really cool piece of technology. So yeah, they're kind of top picks for me. London as well is amazing with the underground and the buses and the trams, and again all the different ways that you can get around and just how easy it is. So yeah, that's kind of my picks for the places I was most impressed by, and also pleasantly impressed by, and other places I wasn't so impressed by, but maybe that's something to talk about another time. Another question we have here is, what recording equipment do you use? So I use a GoPro Hero 6, I think, somewhere. But yeah, I should have actually had it out here, but I don't have it on me. But I use a GoPro Hero 6 when I'm out and about filming, and also I used to use that for indoor filming as well. I actually got it a couple of years ago when I contributed Open Street View imagery to Mapillary, which is kind of like Google Street View, except you can collect the data yourself, and it's crowdsourced essentially. So people go out and collect Street View images on their bikes or walking around or in their car, and it's all put in the one map. It's a really cool resource and you should check it out. But recently I got a new DSLR, Canon EOS 90D, which is very exciting, and that's what I'm filming on right now. And as you can hopefully tell, it is a much better quality, particularly filming indoors. GoPros are more for the external, external being out and about, kind of videoing, and this one's it's a bit heavier and bulkier, so I can take it outside, but it's a bit more annoying, so I tend to use it for indoor filming. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm using. I use a Rode directional microphone. I also have a lapel microphone if I need to use that. So yeah, and I use DaVinci Resolve to edit the videos. So yeah, that's kind of the equipment that I use most of the time. I've got a little tripod as well, which I use too. So not that fancy, and I obviously use my DSLR mainly for taking photos, but it also shoots really good video as well, so why not have both? Yeah, that's the answer to that question. Next one, how do you get ideas for your videos? Where do you research, and how long does it take to make one? Got quite a few questions on this one. So how I get ideas for my videos, I used to kind of just, things that I'd see on my walks, or, just being out and about and being like, oh, what's that? Why is that there? And start from there, and then go home and try and figure out what it was. And if it's interesting, I make a video, and if not, then I just kind of leave it as a kind of point of interest. And I still do that, obviously, as well. But more and more, when I research a video, I find other things to research in the process of researching that video. So, one great example was the battery electric trams video that I did. I found out about that while I was researching the Box Hill to Doncaster tram video, which is something I wanted to do for a while. And I found out about the 1888 Centennial Exhibition and how the Doncaster to Box Hill electric tram kind of came from that. And while I was researching, I found some newspaper articles and things that referred to the Julian tram and the battery electric tram technology, that it was around at the time and was being promoted as like this thing, as like the future of transport, and everything was going to be battery electric tram in the future. I was like, what on earth is this? What have I haven't heard of this before. So then I started researching and found out it was a really interesting topic, and that's how that video came about. And there's many other examples of that as well, with the Forgotten Freeways videos. When I was researching one freeway video, I'd often find something else or another forgotten freeway that sounded interesting through the process of researching that. So yeah, that's kind of how I find topics for the videos. And I'm also finding more and more suggestions from all of you that are really helpful and really good. A lot of recent videos have actually been from suggestions that people have made. The Ford Factory was a request. What else was there? Yeah, the Doncaster to Box Hill tram was a request as well. The Coot Island explosion was another request. So I do, like I said, I do read them, and I do put them on my list, which is getting pretty long now, but I probably get round to them eventually. But if you've got video ideas, always happy to consider them. And like I said, many of them do get made into videos, so always happy to hear from people. The second part of that, which is where I research, I've researched many different places, but my kind of main go-to places are State Library Victoria website, which is, I don't know what's happened to it recently, but I find it to be really broken. Like half the time the website just doesn't load properly for me. I don't know if it's just me or something, but regardless, it's a really handy resource. I've got lots of photos, mainly on there, images. The other place that I go to, and probably my main source, is Trove from the National Library. It's incredible and an absolutely amazing website. If you haven't checked it out, go to trove.nla.gov.au. You can get lost for hours in there. There's so much to uncover. They've got millions of editions of digitized newspapers. They've got reports in there, photos. It's basically it hosts some of its own stuff, but it mostly is like an aggregator of all these other research sources. So from the National Library, state libraries all around Australia, historical societies, all these other things. So rather than just having to go to each individual website and search for it, you can go to one place, which is Trove. Type in your search query and it will pull up everything that it can possibly find related to that. So Trove is probably the main source, and then from there I go through wherever I need to go from there. And in terms of and also the Public Records Office Victoria, PROV, is also a really good resource. They haven't digitised as much of their collection. I know they're doing a lot of work on that at the moment, and they've got a new website. Sometimes you have to go in person to the archive centre, but that's fine. Like, that's a cool place to be. So they're kind of the main places I research, and then if there's anything specific, then I'll go from there. And to answer the last part of that question, which was how long it takes to make one, and the answer to that is kind of it really depends. So if I have a longer video or I have a lot of sources to cite, that takes me quite a while, mainly because I do cite all my sources, as some of you have noticed. So in every single video, I've either got a list of all the sources in the video description or a link to a page with them all listed. I strongly believe in citing sources, not just to give credit to people who've taken photos or done prior research or whatever, but also to give transparency, and also if people are interested in learning more about a particular topic, you can just go to that page and click on the link or whatever. So that is probably the most time consuming part of making a video, is just checking and making sure that I have put all the sources in there and doing it as I go, so I don't miss any. So yeah, probably around a day in total, maybe a bit longer, for editing, filming. If I'm going out to film as well, obviously that takes a bit longer because I've got to go somewhere and film it and then come back. But if I'm just doing a voiceover with some pictures or videos, then that tends to take a little bit less time, assuming I've already got the videos and photos. But yeah, some videos have taken me quite a lot longer, because they've either been longer videos or just more difficult to research as well. So yeah, that's kind of the answer to that one. And finally, one of the key questions which I got asked was, am I going to do more Forgotten Freeway videos? The short answer to that is I'm not planning on doing any, but I may get back to it and do a special one in the future, depending on what people want to see. I did enjoy making the Forgotten Freeway videos, and I know they were quite popular. So yeah, I guess maybe at some point in the future I might come back and do more Forgotten Freeways. I wanted to kind of get away from the Forgotten Freeways for a little while, because I've got a list of other topics that I do want to cover as well. But Forgotten Freeways are still an interesting topic, and there are many more to cover. I think I only covered about 20% of them, because there were lots and lots of freeways that weren't built. So yeah, I'll probably have to come back and do some more. I don't think I'm ever going to get through all of them, because there were so many of them. But like I said, I'll try and come back and do some more. Yeah, so they were kind of the main questions that I got asked. I'm sorry for those I didn't get to. Like I said, I didn't want to make this video too long. I will try to get around to responding to a couple more if you've left a comment, and if you did submit one through the form and you're really interested in answering that, then send me a message on my website and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So yeah, in the meantime, please keep the topic suggestions coming through. Like I said, I do make videos about them, and it's always great to hear it. And there are recent examples of me actually making videos on your suggestions. So yeah, keep them coming, and one day you might see your suggestion made into a video. So something else I wanted to mention as well is those of you who I've actually met out in the real world. I've seen a few of you either when I've been filming or just been walking around or out and about as well. So thanks for coming up and saying hi, and thanks for having a chat. If you do see me out there, feel free to come up and say hello. Give me your topic suggestion in person as well. I'm more likely to remember it then, or kind of write that down as soon as I get home and be like, oh, I've got to make this video. So yeah, if you do see me, I'm always happy to have a chat. So come up and say hello, and yeah, it's really nice to hear people's feedback in person as well. So it's not just doing it via computer. The last thing I wanted to cover was kind of a bonus question, I suppose, but some people asked about the future of the channel and what's coming next. So I might do a separate post or video about that in the future, but basically I'm planning to continue making topics about local history for now, so pretty much covering the same ground that we have for the past year or two. But it does seem like there's a lot of interest in some specific topics from the feedback and people I've spoken to. So like I mentioned, the Forgotten Freeways videos, there's a lot of interest in more transport topics, and also former industrial facilities. That seems to be the three key things that people are interested in. But I also don't want to lose sight of the less popular ones, because like I said before, I am really interested in bringing out some of those, I don't want to say untold stories, but less known topics and things. That was kind of why I started the channel in the first place. So I don't want to lose sight of that. But there's no reason I can't keep doing that and also cover those more, in-demand topics, I want to say. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm planning to do. Potentially as well, cover some more of those transport topics as well, and share some of that knowledge, because I've gotten quite a few questions through the website and in the comments about some specific transport planning topics or issues. So maybe covering some of those and sharing some information to get through those topics too. Who knows? But yeah, that's kind of the general plan, and we'll see what happens over the next year or so and where we end up. So yeah, that was it. Again, thank you so much for getting us to 10,000 subscribers. I think we're now at 11 or something, so we'll keep going. We'll see where we go. Regardless, I'll keep making videos for as long as you guys are interested in watching them. And yeah, please keep in touch. Keep sending me messages, sending me topic suggestions, and yeah, even if you see me in real life, as I said, come up and say hi. Thanks as always for watching, and yeah, I'll see you next time.